I've always gravitated towards bows and arrows in games. There's just something about shooting a thin arrow across a long distance and seeing it hit things with such amazing precision that fills me with accomplishment, more so than with guns. So imagine my face when I first saw the Tristringer. I was like, yes, finally, I can't wait to see how people use it. This must be a popular weapon since it's literally the poster weapon for Splatoon 3. Well, sadly, people don't like this weapon as much as I thought. And I can see why, honestly. It is a pretty difficult weapon to master, and it has certain attributes that can confuse new and returning players. Even I wasn't too fond of it the first time I tried it, but now, after using it a lot in anarchy battles and just playing around with it in general, I can safely say that this is a pretty good weapon. Today I hope to explain to you how the Tristringer works, and hopefully shed some light on how you should and should not play this weapon. The first thing to notice about the Tristringer is that it has not one, not two, but 3 reticles. These are spread out evenly, and by tapping the shoot button you can see that 3 shots of ink are spread evenly out. When you hold down the shoot button, these 3 reticles move closer together depending on how long you hold the button. When you let go, the 3 shots are a lot closer together and shoot a much farther distance. Along with this, when the bullets hit the ground, they explode into small amounts of ink. These little explosions are the reason why I love this weapon so much, but I'll get to that later. Now, you may have noticed that while charging, the reticle hits 2 main charge points, the first happening relatively quickly and the second taking longer. If you shoot the stringer at the first charge point, you'll see that the distance is pretty much the same as just tapping, but the small explosives are active and spread out. After this threshold, the longer you hold down the shoot button, the farther the shots will fly, and the more narrow those shots will be. Basically, just remember that further equals clustered, and you should be alright. One more quirky thing about stringers is that when you jump, you change the way you shoot from a horizontal configuration to a vertical one. As long as you're in the air, you'll be able to shoot vertically. This comes in handy for getting splats, but I'll also get to that later. Now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about its ink coverage. As you can see, the stringer isn't exactly good at covering turf, and I won't pretend that it is. Just shooting like this makes it extremely annoying to even move forward. However, there is a little trick that I use to make inking a lot more fluid. If you aim straight and then shoot closer to the ground, you can ink a lot more turf with only a little extra effort. The movement might take a little bit to get used to, but like everything, it gets easier the more you practice. Even if inking up close is a little better this way, the Tristringer is not a frontline weapon, like at all. This is primarily a backup or support type weapon. You don't want to get too close to enemies with this thing, because 9 times out of 10, you'll lose. This brings me to the topic of combat. The Tristringer is not a strong weapon in combat, which is why you need to play smart with it. With a single bullet with no charge, you deal 30 damage. If all bullets hit your target, which is unlikely since they're so spread out, you do a total of 90 damage, which isn't enough to splat on its own. And at half charge and full charge, a single shot will deal 35 damage. That's right, if you use a half charge or a full charge, it still deals the same amount of damage. The only difference is, it's easier to hit 3 out of 3 shots with a full charge due to its limited spread. In total, you do 105 damage, which is just enough for a splat. Little side note, keep this in mind for Salmon Run. Your targets are bigger there, so you can deal a lot more damage with half charges than waiting for a full one. When you're going for splats, if you're more confident at hitting your targets than I am, you can aim directly for opponents. I find it easier to hit people when jumping since the vertical alignment lines up much better to players than the horizontal one. But this doesn't mean that horizontal doesn't work. It does, just not as much. For me at least. You can also arc shots and still do the same amount of damage. The times when this works makes you feel like a god of the splatlands. Oh, and when you do hit those shots, it makes a lovely little pop sound that's different from chargers, blasters, or nozzle noses. Ah, music to my ears. If your aim isn't perfect and you still want to use this weapon, don't worry. Since this is a support weapon, you want to stick to the back, preferably as high up as possible. This is so you can put on pressure in the form of the tiny explosives I was talking about earlier. At first I thought these explosions were really unnecessary since they have such a small blast radius, but you'd be surprised how effective they really are. If you send out a constant barrage of them, there isn't much the other team can do. You can send them out pretty quickly too if you use half-charge shots. Since they do the same amount of damage and are spread out more, you can cover a larger radius while defending or advancing. Constant shooting means constant chip damage, which gives your teammates an opportunity to sweep in and clean up if you can't manage to splat them yourself. The sub and special for this weapon are Toxic Mist and Killer Whale 5.1. Toxic Mist can be used to put on a little bit of extra pressure. It'll keep people away so you can keep some distance between you while consistently firing at them. If they're caught in the mist, that's your time to go in for some direct hits. I know you want to hear that splat sound! Killer Whale isn't my favorite special in this game, but I'm used to using them. It's possible to aim all 3 of your shots at different people if you can manage to find them. That'll make it more likely to scatter them all, thereby causing them to run into each other, and then you might get some splats. The Tristringer only has 1 set in this game at the time that I'm making this video, so I can't talk about strategies for other kits. If you're watching this video in the distant future, I hope there's a set with point sensors! As far as abilities go, I use some that I rarely use with other weapons. Since you want to play support, 2 abilities I always use with the Stringer are Object Shredder and Thermal Ink. Object Shredder makes it super easy to take out big bubblers and ink walls, and pretty much any other object that can be shredded. On the back lines, it's super helpful to be able to clear paths for the front runners, so I find that Object Shredder is the way to go. Thermal Ink, on the other hand, is helpful for scoping out enemy players around corners. When hit with a single shot, players become visible through walls. When paired with the explosives and arcs of ink, it becomes the perfect ability for the Tristringer. Being able to shoot straight over walls while knowing exactly where the enemies are is one of my favorite things in the world, honestly. This ability is also a pretty good substitute for point sensors, which the Tristringer doesn't have. And you know me, I absolutely love point sensors. So if there's ever a set with the Tristringer and the point sensors... ooh. And that's all I have to say about the Tristringer. At the moment, the only types of stringers are the Reflux and the Tristringer, and both are very different. Big differences between the two are that the Reflux is able to hold charge but has no explosives, while the Tristringer can't hold a charge, but it does have explosives. If the Tri was able to hold its charge, I would have very few complaints about it. But even without it, this weapon can still function well. All you need to know is that the Tristringer is a very difficult weapon to use and master, but once you get the fundamentals down, it becomes an extremely satisfying weapon to use. If you have any other strategies to share with this weapon, tell me in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. If you want to hear more tips in the future, consider subscribing. I also stream a lot of Splatoon 3, so come check out some of these strategies in action. And with that, I wish you luck with the Tristringer. Have a good day, everyone. See ya!